Beyblade vs. QuadStrike is the final season of the Beyblade vs. Saga. And this season we have two main characters. Our first one is named Quadra / Pre. Our second main character is named Bell. Yes, he's from the previous season. But those are our two main characters. And this season we're going to follow both their journeys as they become amazing bladers. This season I say is split into 4 sections. Section 1, I would say it's about meeting Quadra / Pre. I'm probably going to call her Quadra for the rest of this video. And her journey into joining up with Belle. The second section I would say is about past rivals from the previous seasons and getting to know their gimmicks pretty much. The third section of this story is about our tournament to defeat Iger. And our final section of this story is about Pax becoming a villain and having an elemental tournament. Yeah, so this season, it seems like a lot, but honestly, it was kind of short. So our first section is about meeting Quadra and her journey into joining Belle. So Quadra is a blader that wears a mask, and she seems to have some weird powers that go along with her. And Belle, our main character, fights Quadra and loses. So he becomes a little obsessed with her and trying to defeat her. She has her own story going along with Belle's, where she has a brother and her brother is named Pax. Her and Pax together are working onto discovering this weird thing called elemental power. So we'll get into that, but a lot later. Trust me, it seems confusing, but it's not. Pax is really interested on this elemental power, and he's kind of like a backseat gamer for Quadra, where he kind of just tells her how to play the game. Quadra joins up with Belle because Quadra kind of notices she has a lot of fun when she's battling against Belle, so she decides to stick around. And so that's the end of the first section. Not a lot happens. Kind of my least favorite part of this story. So for me personally, it was kind of hard to get into QuadStrike, especially because it wasn't my favorite section. Section 2, also for me, not the best, but this is a section where we meet a lot of our past rivals and we get to see their gimmicks. And the problem I had with this section was a lot of flashback. If you like flashbacks, there's a lot of them. And so that kind of threw me off a little bit. Just flashback after flashback after flashback. Don't get me wrong, I love all these past characters. Like, they're great. And every episode kind of deals with one person going on to the next. But it's just a lot of flashbacks. I mean, I have like a small subplot where Pre is kind of having an identity issue with her Quadra persona. So she's kind of like, am I Quadra? Am I Pre? Who am I? So that's happening in the background. She obviously learns to accept that she's both. This section is kind of just flashback and past characters and their gimmicks. Now we get into the third section of the story. This third section is a tournament to beat Iger, but there is like a lot more going on. Iger is our champion, and we follow Belle and Quadra as they want to go defeat Iger and become champions themselves. During all this, we learn a little bit more about Pax, Pre's brother, or Quadra's brother. We learn that, in a way, Pax is kind of forcing his dream of blading onto Quadra. And we learn the reason Quadra even exists is because Pax was a fanboy of season 2 Shoe, Red Eye. So he really idolized Red Eye, and so he took the idea of a masked blader and put it onto Pre, thinking that would make her a lot stronger because she doesn't identify as Pre anymore. She identifies as the stronger blader named Quadra. It's kind of confusing, but it makes sense in his mind. In case you haven't noticed, I haven't talked a lot about Belle. Belle is kind of just like a comedy relief character at this point. He's kind of just goofing around with Ranzo. He does that for like a lot of this section. The only other thing that kind of matters about this section is Belle gets a new bay because his bay wasn't destroyed, but he just thought like, I can make it stronger. So he gets a new bay. It's alright. And the final section of the story is about Pax becoming a villain now and having this elemental tournament. So we'll get into the elemental stuff here in a little bit, but first we'll get into Pax becoming a villain. Pax was kind of using Quadra as a means to show that he's the best blader by making the best Beyblade, but At this point, Quadra doesn't want to listen to Pax anymore. So he's starting to have a little like crazy ideas. So he decides to leave Quadra and become his own blader at this point. Which honestly in my mind was like, why didn't you do that from the beginning, bro? But whatever. We learned his backstory, which was back in season 1. He was there and he wanted to join the tournament that Vault and Shu were in, but he hurt his little elbow, so he couldn't join. While all this is happening, Pax is starting to become a little villain. Bell gets a new launcher, which is like a sword launcher that this guy had. He just kind of makes it himself. Now let's get into the elemental stuff. So my idea was that every Beyblade was gonna have an elemental type, like an electric type or a water type or a fire type. No, that's not how it goes. So how elemental power works is every character has an elemental. So what an elemental is not an element like lightning, wind, water, or fire. It's not that. So what an elemental is the big monster guys. These guys are elementals, which means the ability to resonance is elemental. Think of it like resonance equals elemental. That's the same thing. So these big guys, those are elementals. So what this season really focuses on is calling these things elementals. So Pax is trying to research these guys and how to activate them. So from like season 1, we know that like they just yell and then these guys pop up, but nobody can see them. They're like invisible. But they figured out a way to kind of measure how much of this you can do, which is kind of confusing, but it really isn't. It's just kind of like these guys equal elemental. That's really pretty much it. Resonance is elemental power. That's pretty much it. It's not that complicated. It does seem complicated because they start adding all this wind, lightning, water, fire stuff, but all of that doesn't matter. That's not real. That's not real. They're not types. They're not like Pokemon. They're not electric types. That's not real. What is real is these guys. This is real. This is what elemental is. And the reason they have all the wind, lightning, water, fire thing is because Pax is making water, lightning, fire, wind Beyblades. He's making Beyblades to try to make that one specific type of resonance possible. That's pretty much it. It's a little confusing, but it just means Quadra is just using different ways of like blading. That's pretty much it. So yeah, elemental. It seems confusing. Trust me, it does look confusing, but it's really not. It just means, again, big guys. That's it. So now, Pax is a villain. Bell got a new launcher. Pax is kind of going crazy. So what happens is Pax fights against Bell in the semifinals, and Pax kind of realizes like, yeah, being this villain kind of sucks. I just want to play Beyblade. And he only realizes that because Bell is the one fighting him. So Bell is our main character this season, but he's kind of like pushed to the background. So the actual plot is Quadra's. Quadra equals actual plot. Bell is the actual main character, but he's kind of like just like the boat taking us to our destination. So it's like he's the boat and Quadra's story is happening on top of the boat. That's pretty much how this season is laid out. Kind of an interesting way to do the story. But let's get into the final episode of this season. The ending of Beyblade Burst. The final episode of this season is one of the most amazing pieces of media I've ever seen. Watching Beyblade Burst and coming up to this final episode, it made me appreciate how amazing this show really is. The only way to understand how great this final episode really is by watching every season of Beyblade. And reaching the ending of Beyblade Burst, watching that final episode, it really captured something that I've never felt before. It was one of the most phenomenal endings I have ever seen. I've never experienced an ending quite like this before. Going through this journey and reaching the end, it really puts everything into perspective on how amazing this all was. Watching this final episode of Beyblade Burst really made it all worth it. Everything worth it. It ends in such an amazing way I can't even explain. I have no words to describe how great this show ends. Beyblade Burst on a whole has its ups and downs, but at the end of it all, it really is an awesome journey to go on. And this final episode is just a love letter to you going on this journey. I would watch all of Beyblade Burst again just to see that final episode again. It is just something you can't experience by watching it out of context. You need to watch everything that comes before. So Beyblade Burst QuadStrike, in my opinion, is not the best. The beginning of it was really hard for me to start. But overall, if I had to rate it, without the final episode, I would give it a 6 out of 10. It is good, but it's not the best. Don't get me wrong. 6 out of 10 is what I think it deserves. But because of that final episode, that ending, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Just by that ending alone, it bumps it up those 2 extra points. An 8 out of 10. This ending was just great. The whole Beyblade saga was just phenomenal. If for some reason you were watching this video and you haven't seen any of Beyblade Burst, like none of the cartoon, go check it out. Watch it. Start it from season 1. Watch through every single season. And once you get to this final episode, you're gonna see it was all worth it. This episode, 10 out of 10. And trust me, you can't watch it out of context. If you watch it out of context, you're not gonna know what's going on. It's gonna be just like, okay, cool, weird ending. But with all the context, with all the seasons in your back pocket, great episode. Well, that's the end of Beyblade Burst. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace!